Dr. Manny. Welcome to Asylum. This is video 2 in a series that I decided to do about getting unstuck and some of the processes that are effective in doing that. Problem is, a lot of times when you're stuck, it's usually because you don't have the resources. You can hear it now? Much better. Awesome. When you're feeling stuck, it's because you don't have the resources, whether it be the Hey, Latoya, thanks for joining. It's Latoya, right? I think you told me your name was Latoya, despite it being LT on Facebook. If not, I'm sorry. Okay, so in yesterday's video, not yesterday, it was a few days ago, I did video 1. And the most important message, I think, in that video was the importance of not identifying with a state of stuck. In the moment that you feel stuck, you don't want to go into the panic of, I am stuck. I am stuck essentially disempowers you because it creates this assumption that instead of just being a state, something that you're in that you'll eventually get out of, it's who you are. You're stuck in there, literally. It's a semantic trick, but it's important. You're welcome, of course. So as opposed to when you say I feel stuck, when you feel stuck, feeling is transient. It's a way of reminding yourself that it's sort of a neurochemical cocktail that's going through your body, a hormone cocktail that's going to pass. You can breathe through it. You can wait. You can do an action which allows you to feel differently, feel less stuck, feel productive. So on the heels of that, the next topic I want to look at is the way that mindset affects your sense of stuckness, and really how just being even aware of certain mindsets, you're empowered to feel different and shift from being stuck in a thought that says that you are stuck, to a thought that gives you a sense of empowerment. Okay? So what I want to do is what's most effective for me is a lot of times, well, in the past, several times when I was trying to understand mindset a few years ago, I just kept coming across different uses of it, and it kind of made it difficult for me to get a clear idea of where to jump in, how to start actually applying mindset as a tool, how to notice when I was stuck in the wrong mindset, when I was feeling stuck in the wrong mindset, and what to do about it. So let's go with the first one. The first mindset frame, the first way of thinking about mindset, the one that most academics jump to, and this is a hat tip to my physician roots. You know, we like to go empirical. We like to go with the ideas that the data backs. But when I'm in the trenches, to my entrepreneur roots, you gotta yank the tool that works out of the shed and use that, as opposed to the tool that has all this data and whatever that may not necessarily precisely apply to your thought process in that moment. So on the academic tip, we have Carol Dweck's work with fixed mindset and growth mindset. The main idea that I take from that is, in a fixed mindset, you have this belief that you got what you got. This is your brain. You have a certain amount of smarts, and as such, your self-esteem, your identity is, again, bound to that. And a lot of your energy goes towards like hiding from really getting a good measure of your performance in that moment. So it puts you in a frame of mind where you're more inclined to be focused on looking good, on presentation, as opposed to connecting the truth, finding out your strengths, your weaknesses, getting clear on your values, and executing effectively. That's a fixed mindset. Whereas a growth mindset is understands that with each experience, your mind, you, and what you're capable of continues to grow. So in each moment, the emphasis becomes more on honesty, truth than perception management. Hey George, thanks for joining. Hey L'Oreal, thanks for joining. Welcome to Asylum. So now with the fixed and the growth mindset, it's more useful for me to think of it as, with the growth mindset, I like to think more in terms of an abundance versus a scarcity mindset, kind of mapping the fixed mindset to scarcity, because the idea in the scarcity mindset is that you run the risk of running out of resources. Whereas an abundance mindset, you know that all the resources are available. You just have to shift your mind to be resourceful. Think of some options. Think of who you can call. Think of who you can reach out to. Think of a plan with a longer runway so you can try more things, so you can make more mistakes, so you can learn from the mistakes. So I think of the abundance mindset sometimes as a mastery mindset, because you know that this is you, this is your destiny, you're unfolding, and you surround yourself with supporting, loving, and empowering people that allow you to actually step through the thought process and be vulnerable and open. You don't have a sense of the scarcity, and I think of scarcity. The scarcity mindset, I think of three frames. There's scarcity of money, and what that does is a lot of times you're thinking of a plan and you constrain yourself to what you believe that you're allowed to do, and sometimes even what you believe you're deserving based off the money in the moment. Whereas if you apply an abundance mindset to money, what that empowers you to do is to imagine that money is an unlimited resource all around you, and when you think of your plan, you think more strategically, where you think, what is it that I want to do? You let the vision lead, and based off the vision, you paint it out, you grow it to scale, and you think it out to scale, you allow it to energize you and feel the passion about it, and believe that as you grow, this is where the growth mindset aspect kicks into this. In the abundance mindset, there's time for growth. There's the time for going through the journey, and you know that the goal will actually transform you in the process of pursuing it. And then it becomes less about the achievement, and it becomes more about being present in the moment to learn each lesson that what is happening is teaching you. That's an abundance mindset. Now, so I want to make sure I stay in the first frame was abundance and scarcity when it applies to money. That's how that affects you. Second one is abundance and scarcity mindset when you apply it to time. That's when you feel a sense of hurriedness, so your brain is sort of in a fight-flight as opposed to tend and befriend. You're not thinking collaboratively. You're kind of rushing. You're more judgmental. It's more of a management mindset. It's like, let's get it done. It needs to be done. Somebody somewhere is coming to evaluate us. A background sense of threat driving the fear. And so I said fight or flight. Tend and befriend, again, is a more collaborative, interactive, engaging mindset where really you're going towards authenticity and vulnerability with the intention of developing these long-term relationships. In an abundance mindset as it applies to time, you're pacing yourself, you're being more deliberate, in strategic planning, you'd be more inclined to estimate how much time things are going to take. Notice how long it takes this time, and then next time you might even there's more time to practice, that's for sure. So you might start thinking in terms of, this is the first iteration, it took me this long, let me use that time estimate, let me use the mistakes that I made, let me use the feedback that I got from people, because you're actually listening to each person and seeing their perspective. Let me take all those things and allow it to help me grow in the next iteration. Oh, I came all the way down to this lake, and I didn't show y'all the lake view yet. I'm not at the best part of the lake, but I am at the coolest part, where I found a little shade tree. I was out here rotisserieing, and I didn't want to bake all the way through before I got this done. Plus, I wanted a bench. So you're getting more woods than lake in this one. Now, so we looked at abundance and scarcity mindset as it applies to time. We looked at it as it applies to money. And the third one is when you think of the abundance and scarcity mindset as it applies to love. When you do that, a scarcity of love mindset is one in which you'll be tending to settle in your relationship. You'll tend to allow people into your life and to keep in your consciousness who don't necessarily treat you the way you feel like, well, often in that moment we develop a resentfulness because we convince ourselves that we're not deserving of more love or better treatment, and as such we're more inclined in those types of situations to stay in relationships that don't nurture us, relationships with some toxic aspects that you tolerate because in your mind there's no one else out there better for me. No one is going to love me more. This is what the universe had in store for me. That's why it's right in front of me. As opposed to if you're thinking about abundance in the context of love, what that opens you up to is choice. Uh, it's more value-based decision making because that's the whole plenty of fish in the sea, where you decide clearly. Well, primarily if you think in terms of abundance and love, then you're not so much in a rush or in the scarcity slash urgency way of thinking where you're like desperately looking for someone and grabbing the first person that comes along and making it fit and satisficing, to use like the economic wording. Uh, Instead, what you're doing is what we do anytime there's abundance of something. Abundance introduces the possibility of introspection. It introduces room for patience, choice, and it introduces the opportunity, even within relationships, friendships, um, even family, church, and communities, and work environments, to ask yourself, do I love this? Does it bring me joy? Does it make me feel fulfilled? If not, are there some ways that I can change it? Or do I need to move on to a better situation, whether it's with someone who shares your vision better, uh, working for a company that shares your values more, being in a job that the identity narrative that you tell yourself when you're doing the job makes you feel as if you're walking in your purpose, as opposed to going to some place for money, to keep your head above water. Again, this is all frames of of scarcity and abundance mindset as it applies to. So we talked about time, money, and love. So that's the scarcity and abundance mindset, how I think of it. The next frame would be to think in terms of uh, another mindset that's useful is to think about, and this is action theory. This is what mindsets actually help you get off your butt and do stuff. So, in this is for those of you who like to geek. I think this is Goldwitzer's action theory. I don't know how to spell his name. If you want more on that, send me a private message and I will send you a link. So there are two mindsets. There is, and this is about how you process information. So this is sort of an information theoretic approach, where there's the deliberative mindset and then there's the implementation mindset. In the deliberative mindset, you haven't decided yet. You have two ideas in mind, two choices, and you may like one more than the other, but you haven't specifically thought it. Again, this is sort of background scarcity affecting you in that moment, where you haven't actually thought through each option. You just kind of have a surface feeling like, I like this one, I can't decide. Often, a way to transition from that is pros and cons lists, getting feedback from friends. Sometimes even jumping into one with the knowledge that you had both choices and that you don't have to overcommit to the first choice, but you want to jump into that first choice and try it. Now, that's in the deliberative mindset. Again, you're weighing these two things in your mind. The problem with weighing two things in your mind is that often the indecisiveness leaves room for self-doubt, self-criticism, self-judgment, because sometimes when we're indecisive and we haven't consciously made a decision and we're indecisive on an unconscious level, because we have both models, mental models accessible, you tend to feel sort of wishy-washy, and you might feel like you're adrift with no sense of direction with that mindset. Whereas the second you make a choice, your brain does this trick where you have things like choice-induced preference, and we prefer anything that's ours. And a lot of times when we make a choice, we identify with the choice. So, for example, if you choose careers, once you choose to be a doctor, you're like, I am a doctor. I've identified with that. And so certain things happen when you identify with something, when you step into the choice and you own it as yours and you commit to it. You develop choice-induced, I also mentioned choice-induced preference. There's a little dopamine spurt that happens. You develop optimism, because immediately when you really decide and commit, like truly commit to put everything into it, to go, straight balls to the wall with it, what happens is your brain starts processing the information differently. The energy that you had in the two models, the two mental models before you chose, or the energy that you may have been burning by going back and forth between the two models, the two ideas, two belief systems, two ways of seeing stuff, that was making you feel like you lacked clarity. You have that clarity the second you choose one path as yours. And you're like, this is the reality I'm going to believe in. This is the reality I'm going to elaborate. This is the reality I'm going to choose as mine and pour my all into, and just follow that path. So what happens then, again, is because now you're not thinking, your brain is not giving equal value to the two ideas. One idea gets devalued. And by devalued, you don't want to create a habit of criticizing and just tearing down and insulting something just because you don't want it anymore. You just make a clear decision that you have a preference for this. Now, the beauty of not devaluing in a negative, judgmental way, like in a good, bad way, is that essentially what that allows you to do is prioritize your actions. You're like, you know what? I'm going to try this one first. I'm going to give this one my full focus. I'm going to go deep with this one, get the information, gather the resources, pursue it until such point, and you want to get clear as to what such point is, such point at which you're like, you know, this is really not working. I need to go ahead and hey, Kelly, thanks for joining. Welcome to Asylum. So, at which point, and guys, if you're enjoying this, share it to your timeline. You know, let's go viral. These are super useful ideas, I hope, and hopefully if you find them useful, possibly someone who you know and love who is not even aware of it might find them useful and find that it helps them get unstuck as well. So, where was I with advice? So once you've made a choice, and this is, remember, there's the two mindsets that I'm talking about in this piece are your deliberative mindset, where you haven't decided yet, where you're still kind of on the wall weighing your options, and the implementation mindset, which is the one where you've committed. Remember, implementation mindset gives you optimism. It gives you clarity, and this is precisely where I was. The clarity that you get is because in your mind now, you're not pouring cognitive energy, and by energy I mean like literal electricity in the representation in your mind. You're not activating both models. So this is focus. This is when you're not multitasking, you're not going back and forth doing a little of each and then wondering why both of them are taking twice as long to accomplish. You shift to the one that you want to commit to, you focus on it, and that commitment allows you to release the information from the other one, so that when you're looking at the environment, you don't get what's called executive dysfunction. Your working memory isn't taxed with two sets. And once you've made that choice and you committed, your relevance, is it relevance or relevancy? Well, the word that means deciding what's relevant in the moment, like in the midst of action, the stuff that's most relevant becomes more salient. Your unconscious manages that just by shifting to an implementation mindset. What else about it? So, a lot of times, really, two things you can't tell between either of them which is going to be the best one. This is why when you have sort of a proactive versus a reactive mindset, with a proactive mindset, when you choose, you jump in, you start implementing small, lower risk things, because you know that instead of procrastinating and being stuck in a deliberative mindset for too long, once you have enough information, you've made a choice. There's a confidence and a self-efficacy that kicks in, because A, you know that you've committed and you want and you have that new clarity. B, you started early, proactively, and you have a clear model in mind, and you're taking the steps and you're focused, and you're able to, your emotions when you focus are tied to the outcomes in the moment, the feedback in the moment. And because you're focused and you have a clear model in mind, you're able to attract other people who share the vision, who share your values, who are likely to make decisions similar to yours, because it becomes sort of a repellent to other people. When you have momentum and you're in motion and you're focused and you've made a choice and you're headstrong, it attracts people who share your views, who share your values, who enjoy the signal. A lot of times in the self-help stuff we say, when you choose, you raise your vibration. That optimism means you feel better. You're more confident in your ability to accomplish it. If you watched the last video, video 1 in the series, I talked about the importance of motivation and how motivation was made up of two parts. If you think about the formula, there's desirability, how much do you want it, and there's feasibility, how much you believe you can do it. And feasibility often involves resources, trusting your network, trusting yourself, building up a history of accomplishing, of having positive outcomes in similar and related tasks. Um, so that's sort of how the motivation fits into the mindset aspect. You can dig deeper into the motivation stuff by watching the prior video. Um, okay, so far we've looked at three frames of mindsets. We looked at, to be academic at the beginning, we looked at Carol Dweck's fixed mindset and growth mindset. We talked about that sort of lightly because you can Google that and there's tons of stuff and there's a bunch of memes that kind of break it down. It's academic, it's useful, it's nice and theoretical, but when you're in the trenches and doing bare knuckle implementation, there's other mindsets that are important to be aware of that exist. I talked about the scarcity versus abundance mindset and how the scarcity mindset has affects your decisions because it causes urgency-based, scarcity and urgency-based, short-term sort of myopic decision-making, whereas the abundance mindset allows for planning, volition. It introduces choice, and it shifts your dynamic in your brain entirely. It shifts your frame of reference to a more empowered and intentional mindset, intentional perspective. So that was set two. The second frame of mindset. The third frame of mindset, and within that one, the abundance and scarcity one, I talked about scarcity of love, scarcity versus abundance of love, scarcity versus abundance of time, scarcity and abundance of money. Now, a lot of times you'll hear people talk about getting rid of your money block, getting rid of your love block. Hey, Centrell, thanks. Welcome to Asylum. Thanks for joining. So when you hear people talking about their money block, when people talk about how they're crushed for time, pressed for time, and every time you make a suggestion, even a simple suggestion, they basically, I don't have time to do it. And even when they go in to do it, they hop in and they do it in a rushed way where they're not fully present. They're in their mind, they're already imagining the future outcome where they failed because they ran out of time, and as such, they're not learning, they're not growing, they're not working towards mastery, and as such, even when that situation keeps coming up later, you haven't developed healthy and productive mental models and schema of it by staying present in the mistakes as opposed to going into guilty thinking, shaming, negativity, and distorted, amplified regret. Let's see, were those? So I talked about that was the abundance versus scarcity mindset. Other mindset frame is this is from Goldwitzer's action theory, which is also super academic, but it's more practical academic because the work that he did was about helping people shift the way in which your brain processes the information on an empirical mathematical level. So this guy is all math models, but it's math models for high performers. So in that case, what you're looking at is the liberation versus the implementation mindset. Now, if you want to geek deeply, there's a book called The E-Myth, which I super recommend if you're switching from a career, an A-type career, physicians, lawyers, MBAs, academic MBAs. This book is super helpful because it's super reality-based. In that book, they talk about three other mindsets that are useful to kind of have in your mind, to have set in your mind as possible ideas to use to help you shape your perspective. The book is E-Myth. Did I not say the book? I can't remember. Is it Michael Gerber? It might be Michael Gerber. E-Myth Revisited actually was the one that I read. I read it as an audiobook because the narrator was super good, and I think I've mentioned this before. With an audiobook, when I tune out, the book keeps going. And yes, ma'am, E-Myth, that's right. Better yet, yes, Dr. Kelly. Respect. So, in E-Myth, he talks about three mindsets that are useful, especially if you're transitioning careers because you're feeling stuck. He talks because what he brings to the foreground is that each mindset has a set of values. And remember, your brain works on value-based decision-making, and the more you clarify your values, the more you're able to have accessible and at the foreground and able to pull into working memory, which is consciousness. Hey, Barry, welcome to Asylum. Able to pull into conscious memory the mental tools, the ideas, the beliefs, the attitudes, the habit sets, the mental scripts, the mental schema that are most relevant and therefore most likely to have the best outcome. Thanks, Latoya. Michael E. Gerber. Awesome. I actually remembered that. That's crazy. Some books I get like ridiculous source amnesia where like I'll be forgetting what book it came to, and if you catch me in the right mood, I swear it's my own idea, right? So let's see. So His three mindsets in E-Myth are the technician mindset, the manager mindset, and the entrepreneur mindset. Now, what the distinction that he makes is the technician values the execution, is develops a deep, specific mastery, a detailed, specific mastery of the craft. So this is a physician who has spent decades getting training, or a lawyer who's learned all the aspects of law, and as such, it's like, give me the next problem, give me the next problem, let me solve it. Don't come around here with all that philosophizing and daydreaming, etc. So, in the technician mindset, sometimes you tend to be annoyed by someone in the management mindset because they're coming through sort of with a bigger picture, and sometimes it feels as if they're treating you like a cog in the machine. And that makes you feel stuck, makes you feel typecast, to use sort of a film metaphor. So the technician, again, is deep in the trenches, master of the trade, but sometimes in that mindset you can get blindsided because you're using all your energy sort of as either the hamster in the wheel, or even if you're not feeling that sense of frustration, you might be so in the trenches, so in the work, that as the world is moving around you, something in business they call value migration, where what you do, the way you think about doing it, if you're presenting it and branding it that way, it's less valuable to people than if you step out of the technician mindset into the entrepreneur mindset. I'll get into that in a minute. So we talked about technician mindset. The management mindset is at a bit of a higher level of abstraction, but still is task-driven and is trying to get the outcome with limited resources, with the knowledge that we have now. Okay? So the management mindset, often this is someone who has a certain amount of power and, again, a certain amount of expertise, but it's more expertise of managing, of having a desired outcome, knowing what the resources are, knowing what the plan is we need to follow. This is less brainstorming, less future casting, less imagining, less head in the clouds. Often when you're dealing with a business or a system where you're dealing with the management team, what you'll find is that management can be a little irritated by marketing and by the CEOs and the vision team, because every time they're trying to get crap done, I'm a big entrepreneur mindset. Certain stuff I get technical mindset, like the fact that I'm sitting here doing God knows how long video about mindset. I can get caught up in those aspects and be impatient as well. But the manager mindset has an abstraction, a level of abstraction, to be able to look at how do I get these people to do what I want them to do to execute the vision, and not so much on a motivating, connecting to vision mindset, but get off your butt and do what the hell I told you, because this is our deadline, these are the resources, this is what we know, this is the current definition of the problem. So one of the shortcomings of that mindset, where you can feel stuck, is that if you're a task-oriented, execution-oriented person, it's all good. You'll feel a sense of fulfillment, because really your joy comes from getting this done. You don't feel as if there's some self-expression or some purpose beyond that you're missing out on. With a management mindset, you don't tend to be as concerned about the specific expertise of the individuals, the nooks and crannies. You can be. Some managers are flexible. Some management mindset people can pop out of each perspective and remember that there are different ways of looking at the problem or the situation. But with the management mindset, often the technical aspects, you let go of all the technical. You let go of the how, the subspecifics of the how. Okay? It's important not to have an empathy fail and forget that these different mindsets have different values and different driving energies. Last one is going to be the entrepreneur mindset. Important to the entrepreneur mindset, this is a more heart-driven, more vision-driven mindset. The passion for the entrepreneur is more, the power of the entrepreneur mindset is that we do time travel. I get excited thinking about the entrepreneur mindset because, I've identified with it pretty deeply. It's about getting clear about who you are, what you value, what you want to see in the world, and kind of when you see a pain in the moment, you kind of go into yourself and be like, well, what are the possible solutions? if if the sky was the limit, if I had unlimited resources, if I had unlimited funding, if I had a supportive team, if I had the right people, if I had the right timing, if I trusted my intuition, if I didn't choke and freeze up and get afraid, entrepreneur mindset is less risk averse. It's at a higher level of abstraction where, for me, it's a projection of values because you realize that the locus of control and value in that moment is internal. So you don't have to be super bound to the outcome because you're aware that the outcome is a product of your imagination, and as such, you don't guilt, shame, and over regret. You don't beat yourself up with those negative emotions if it ends up that. And Megan, welcome us to Asylum. Thanks for joining. You don't over guilt yourself. You don't over judge yourself if it doesn't look exactly how you imagined it, because there's an adaptive flexibility, a cognitive flexibility during the implementation process, because you're aware that after all, you have these core values, these principles that you believe in, and you focus on actually stepping through the implementation, but continuing to be in alignment with the why, connected with the purpose, such that if you have to shift implementation, if in the end it ends up looking entirely different than you had initially imagined it, you still know that it carries the ethos, because along the way, the person that you became and the perspective that you developed guided you towards that way of implementing, with the awareness of the resources that were available in the landscape in which you are. Is that grammatically correct? Oh well, hopefully you understood what I meant. So the power in the entrepreneur mindset can frustrate your technicians on your team, and even yourself when you flip back into technician mindset, if you don't have a clear understanding that all these mindsets exist in all of us, and you drop out of scarcity, you calm yourself down, and you choose the identity in which you stand in that moment. It may be that for a moment you need to drop into technician mindset, but a specific technician. You might need to, if you're a solopreneur, it might mean that you spend a week honing your WordPress skills, or your Audacity skills, or your podcasting skills, or your face-to-face sales skills. What the moment calls for. If you're the whole business, the importance of work. This is the whole working on your business instead of in your business. You can drop in as a technician and do the work, but you don't get so bogged down in that identity that you forget that there are other pieces in the machine, and that the machine itself has a bigger vision that it's moving towards. Hopefully that makes sense. So with the entrepreneur mindset available, you're able to then choose to intentionally switch into the technician mindset, as opposed to being bound by identity, overwhelmed, frustrated because nobody understands me and this crap is not working. You in the technician mindset, you're like, you do hella detail-oriented work, you focus, you make sure the pieces work, you understand the stuff enough to be in there and eventually pop out, delegate that piece, pop into a management mindset where you can scan the landscape of what needs to be done based off what your entrepreneur in you has conceived and imagined as the future, what the landscape. Hey Kim, welcome to Asylum. It's Dr. Kim also, right? And Dr. Kelly. I like to make sure that when my docs come through, and Doc Centrell, you might still be with me. I want to make sure that when my docs come through, I remember, because those couple of decades of work, I'm going to call you by your proper name. Respect, right? So those three, what the most powerful aspect of the framing of those three mindsets in Michael E. Gerber's E-Myth, is to understand that all those mindsets are information configurations. It's a choice to step into a certain frame of reference where you've decided that in this moment, and they help you stay present. In this moment, the information is most relevant to make me most competitive, to make me most effective, to make me most walking in my purpose, most alignment with my why, most living by my principles. The information is most relevant that I need to make most salient by shifting my values, shifting my perspective, is different. Okay, so again, in the technician mindset, you're talking about implementation-based, detail-oriented, super meticulous, super focused, and getting this damn piece done. Leave me alone with your new ideas, Mr. Entrepreneur Mindset. Okay, so when you're aware that you have that mindset within you, because it's an information configuration, you can dig in deep. You can say, like, in terms of myself, after I do this video, I'm headed to the library because Thinking About Quitting Medicine Volume 2 is coming y'all's way, quick plug. And I like to lock myself away in the library, either in silence or with my urban meditation music, another plug. I like to lock myself away with something that once I drop into the right trance, once I drop into the right state, I'm able to just implement and not think about all the other stuff, not come up with another crazy idea until I move the ball forward. You know, I don't go chasing multiple rabbits. I just do. Execute and evaluate, as my coach would say. You do the thing in the moment that is right in front of you. You look at the feedback and you get a clear idea in an honest, non-identity bound, non-ego bound way as to whether your execution sucked, whether you need someone else to do it, another technician, whether you need to delegate, whether you need to step back, whether you've been doing it for too long, whether the perfectionist in you is taking over, whether your inner critic is too loud. Just in technician mindset, you want to be aware of that. Switching over to the management mindset, the importance of the management mindset when you activate that is to be aware that some of your people might be, some of your team might be in technician mindset, or you may need to drop into technician mindset to execute so you can communicate with someone or demonstrate to them what you want done before you can pop up to either management or to entrepreneur mindset, where you it's kind of bird's eye view of stuff, or where you're dreaming and shifting and guiding the ship. Okay, so it's important to be aware that the technician mindset, they're neck deep in doing the work. They don't want to be interrupted, and they don't want to be micromanaged, and that goes for for yourself as well. Remember, when you're the one doing all three of these roles, you want to be aware that when you slip into these different personas, into these different identities, when you're wearing that hat, you're going to feel a certain way. You're going to have certain values that are foreground, and as such, you're more inclined to perceive the world in that specific way. So, in management mindset, you want to avoid empathy fail. You want to be aware of not becoming suddenly projecting your inner critic onto the people executing, because you forgot what it was like to be in the trenches, in the technician mindset. As I'm thinking about it now, it feels as if the technician mindset is beautiful to think about with the implementation mindset, because I think with the technicians, they pride themselves on their competence, and as such, the execution, the systematic expertise of in the moment being like, this is the next ideal step. Okay, the entrepreneur mindset, what's important to recognize about the other two aspects is that if you're popping from idea to idea, the technician aspect of you or the technicians on your team are like, what the hell, dude, pick one so we can execute, so we can ball out. Even the management, when you're in the entrepreneur mindset, you have to realize that when you're going future based and looking into the future and these big visions, unlimited money to execute, unlimited time, blah blah blah, when you're in this abundance mindset, you got some other people on the team who are executing to pay a bill. Hey Cindy, welcome to Asylum. You have other people who are executing to pay a bill. They get your vision, but they also have people to feed, and also remember that you have people to feed. So you don't want to so pie in the sky that you haven't, that you disconnected from reality, disconnected from the ethos of the market, what people want, what people see when they look at you. You want to make sure that you keep all those things in mind when you're in the entrepreneur mindset. What am I passionate about? What's my vision? What are my principles? What are the core values that I want embedded in all the steps that I've done as I've walked through this as a technician? What are the values of interpersonal relating, and what's the ethos that I want my management, or even when I step into a management role, what are the values that I want in action when I'm in those states of mind, or when I've pulled people in and delegated to them to play those roles within the architecture of what it is I'm looking to get done, whether it's a business, whether it's a cookout, or whatever, So I think those are all the different aspects of mindset as I'm thinking of them right now. As always, the intention is with these videos to eventually sooner than later to transcribe them into text so that you can read them, and ideally I'll put them in a place like on a website where on my blog where they'll be searchable. And the blog is Manny St. Victor MD, ManiSaintVictorMD.com. Yeah. And if you want to sign up for my free, I have a 7-day course that I recently launched, 7-day course on breathing. I call it Inspiration, Making Breathing Meaningful. And the whole purpose of the 7 days of breathing training is that it eventually, when you develop a practice of breathing, you're able to make anything you practice consciously, your mind becomes more adept at knowing when to use it. And by becoming more conscious of your breathing, even something as simple as for 5 minutes, like I advise in the course, you can then, once you put that time in, your mind has that tool now and goes to what's called unconscious competence, which is the fourth stage of learning. It's pretty much mastery, where your unconscious mind recognizes opportunities to use those scripts, what they call affordances. And your unconscious mind pulls the right model, shifts into the right mindset, and maintains a certain sense of competence, confidence, and calm within that state. Yeah. I think what I meant to say is, if you want that, when you go to my website, ManiSaintVictorMD.com, if you scroll to the, the best way is go to ManiSaintVictor.com/asylum awaits. ASYLUM-awaits. AWAITS. If you have any questions about anything I discussed today, then send me a direct message. If you'd like to work with me one-on-one directly, what I do is coaching around mindset. More specifically, I like to call it identity development coaching. It's coaching to reconnect to who you are and how to execute to your full potential without the negativity that a lot of people assume you need. The grind. I went through, when I first jumped into entrepreneurship decades ago, I jumped into grind culture and, sprinting and, sleep when you die. Sort of, a lot of my medical training had me like that, so I jumped into that. But I've shifted more from grind to align, where it's more of a matter of finding my way to flow, finding a way to calm, and developing more sustainable strategies. So the breathing is the beginning of that. The Urban Meditation playlist, which I have the link to in the status here, I think I've put together 44 tracks so far. So it's sort of meta because I think these tracks are a demonstration of what you can do when you drop into flow, because I think I was able to put out a track a day over the last few weeks. That's how I created it. Basically, I focused more on getting into the zone than, I got to get this music out. I just drop into state. As you guys know, if you don't know, now you do, Biggie Small's voice, that I recently got my hypnosis certification. So a subset of hypnosis is shamanic drumming and rhythmic trance, which resonated with me. So I'm more into how can I use certain sounds, whether it's binaural beats or even subliminals, so as to get myself into the right state, embed the affirmations directly into my unconscious as quickly as possible, so that I can execute in the moment as effectively as possible on the right mindset, right set of beliefs, right attitude, right perception, right perspective, right execution. I think that's it. Thanks for joining me in Asylum. The next video I'm going to do is going to be about how toxic interactions and dysfunctional relationships, just different kinds of drama, can keep you stuck by draining the energy that you should be using to create and to be intentional, by getting caught up verbal sparring, caught in your head with your own inner critic when you go into what they call the drama triangle. I think it's Cartman's drama triangle if you want to pre-read. Yeah, so that'll be the next video. Thanks for joining me in Asylum. Dr. Manny.